Hello guys, and welcome to another Honkai Star Rail video. Alright, so it's time for another Honkai Star Rail should you pull or skip video, and the featured limited 5-star of today's video is Blade of the Wind Element, who follows the path of destruction. His character design looks absolutely sick, and I can't wait to go over his kit with you guys and discuss the reasons why you may or may not want to consider pulling him. And finally, before I begin, I of course always have to state my disclaimer that you all should only be using the information and advice provided in this video as reference to your final judgment when it comes down to your decision on pulling or skipping Blade. Alright, with that out of the way, let's begin. To start things off, I'm going to briefly go over the rated 4 stars available on Blade's banner. I went over Su Sheng and Natasha's kit in my SEELE vs Jing Yuan banner video, so please go ahead and check that out. I'll have the link in the description below. Long story short is that Natasha's Eidolons, they're okay, but they're definitely not something that you should be spending your special Star Rail passes or going out of your way just to obtain. Su Sheng is a very strong 4-star hunt character that's worth pulling for, and her Eidolons are pretty solid. Most notably, her Eidolon 1 and Eidolon 6 are the ones that you should be aiming for. Lastly, for Arlan, I'll be covering his entire kit here very shortly. Okay, let's first go over Arlan, who has been subject to a lot of criticism for being weak due to a self-damage inflicting skill and rather mediocre damage. I myself do not own Arlan, and therefore I haven't had the chance to test him out. Regardless, I'm still going to go over his kit, and I'll let you guys be the judge of whether or not he's worth investing into. His basic attack's pretty standard, just single target lightning damage. Next, we get into his skill. Consumes Arlan's HP equal to 15% of his max HP to deal lightning damage equal to a percentage of Arlan's attack to a single enemy. If Arlan does not have significant HP, his HP will be reduced to 1 after using his skill. This skill is the main reason why most people consider slotting Arlan into their teams, because the skill does not consume any skill points. Instead, it consumes his max HP, which therefore allows Arlan to function as a skill point neutral sub DPS. Next, for his ultimate, deals lightning damage equal to a percentage of Arlan's attack to a single enemy, and lightning damage equal to a percentage of Arlan's attack to enemies adjacent to it. About an average energy cost of 110, so that's already a positive. And it also gives Arlan some AoE damage potential, although not a lot since it's on his ultimate, and he probably won't be spamming it as often as a skill or basic attack. For his talent, increases Arlan's damage for every percentage of HP below his max HP, up to a max of a percentage for more damage. Basically a berserker type of playstyle. The lower HP Arlan is at, the more damage he deals. A risky playstyle unless you pair him with a shielder like Japard, who can keep him safe at low HP, so he's able to dish out as much damage as possible. And finally, for his technique, immediately attacks the enemy after entering battle, deals lightning damage equal to 80% of Arlan's attack to all enemies. A very standard technique, probably not the best technique to start a fight with unless you have no better options. Next, let's go over his major traces. For his first major trace, if the current HP percentage is 30% or lower when defeating an enemy, immediately restores HP equal to 20% of max HP. Finally, some self-sustain. Although very conditional, it's still very appreciated, as without any sort of self-sustain, Arlan would be too reliant on the healer for his survival, so this is definitely one of his major traces that's worth picking up. For his second major trace, the chance to resist DOT debuffs increases by 50%. Kind of a random major trace, although I guess damage over time does in a way counter Arlan's playstyle of dropping to low HP. So I guess a pretty decent major trace. And finally, for his third major trace, upon entering battle, if Arlan's HP is less than or equal to 50%, he can nullify all damage received except for DOTs until he is attacked. I'd say a pretty solid major trace. Basically damage immunity for one instance if Arlan's HP is 50% or lower. Keep in mind, however, that this major trace won't really take effect until after the first battle, because odds are in the first battle Arlan's going to be at full HP. So in terms of priority for major traces, I'd say his first major trace takes the first priority, then his third, and then the second major trace is the last one you should be investing into. Alright, now I'm going to quickly go over his Eidolons. Starting off with his Eidolon 1. When HP is lower than or equal to 50% of max HP, increases skill damage by 10%. A solid damage boost that fits Arlan's Berserker playstyle. Nothing exceptional, but it's nice to have. For his second major trace, using skill or ultimate removes one debuff from oneself. Okay, now this Eidolon is amazing. Sort of a self-cleanse, with the exception that Arlan can't cast his abilities if he's CC'd, so this can only remove debuffs that can deal damage like DOTs, or stat reducing debuffs. Still a very useful Eidolon that any character would love to have. His third Eidolon gives his skill 2 levels and his basic attack 1 level. The majority of Arlan's damage comes from his skill, so he should gain a decent damage boost from this Eidolon. For his Eidolon 4, when struck by a killing blow after entering battle, instead of becoming knocked down, Arlan immediately restores his HP to 25% of his max HP. This effect is automatically removed after it is triggered once or after 2 turns have elapsed. This Eidolon allows for slightly more reckless gameplay, although it's only really useful if you start the battle with Arlan at low HP, since this Eidolon's effect only lasts for 2 of Arlan's turns. Overall, a pretty good Eidolon. His Eidolon 5 just gives him 2 levels in his ultimate and talent, nothing special, just more damage. And finally, for his Eidolon 6, when HP drops to 50% or below, ultimate deals 20% more damage. The damage multiplier of damage taken by the target enemy now applies to adjacent enemies as well. Wow, that is a huge boost to Arlan's AoE damage potential, but it's still not enough to allow him to compete with the likes of characters like SEELE or Jing Yuan. Instead, this Eidolon allows for Arlan to adapt to certain 3-target situations a bit better. A great Eidolon to end things off. Alright, now I'm gonna talk about our man Blade. His regular basic attack is like any other standard basic attack, single target wind damage. However, for his enhanced basic attack, it's a blast-like attack, so hit 1 main target and then 2 adjacent enemies. Let me go over the description. Consumes HP equal to 10% of Blade's max HP, and deals wind damage equal to the sum of a percentage of his attack and a percentage of his max HP to a single enemy. In addition, deals wind damage equal to the sum of a percentage of Blade's attack and a percentage of his max HP to adjacent targets. If Blade's current HP is insignificant, his HP will be reduced to 1 when using Forest of Swords. Forest of Swords cannot regenerate skill points. So, based on what I've analyzed from his enhanced basic attack, Blade seems to be better suited for 3-target or AoE situations. Kinda sucks that Blade doesn't generate skill points on his enhanced basic attack, but I guess if it did, it'd be a bit too broken. I can already imagine a DPS that can actually generate skill points coming out in the future. I really wouldn't be surprised if Hoyoverse decide to release a character like that. Next, let's go over his skill. Consumes HP equal to 30% of Blade's max HP to enter the Hellscape state. When Hellscape is active, his skill cannot be used. His damage dealt increases by a certain percentage, and his basic attack, Sharp Sword, is enhanced to Forest of Swords for 3 turns. If Blade's current HP is insignificant, his HP will be reduced to 1 when he uses his skill. This skill does not regenerate energy. Using this skill does not end the current turn. Okay, so a self-buff that lasts for 3 turns. So Blade won't be burning a lot of skill points, which is a positive. However, the lack of energy regeneration does kind of suck, but maybe they added that to balance his kit. His enhanced basic attack will probably regenerate 30 energy if this is the case, in order to make up for the lack of energy on his skill. For his ultimate, and oh boy, that is a lot of numbers in that text, sets Blade's current HP to 50% of his max HP and deals wind damage to a single enemy equal to the sum of a percentage of his attack, a percentage of his max HP, and a percentage of the tally of Blade's HP lost in the current battle. At the same time, deals wind damage to adjacent targets equal to the sum of a certain percentage of his attack, max HP, and the tally of HP loss in the current battle. The tally of Blade's HP loss in the current battle is capped at 90% of his max HP. This value will be reset and reaccumulated after his ultimate has been used. Anyways, 130 energy is a pretty high cost for an ultimate. so Blade may run into energy regeneration issues. Blade's ultimate can be used as a heal to top him off at 50% HP, or to consume his HP in order to stack his talent, which I will be going over very shortly. Also, another blast-like attack in his kit means Blade definitely is going to excel in 3-target and AoE battles. So he's probably going to play a very similar role to characters like Jing Yuan and Clara. As for his talent, when Blade sustains damage or consumes his HP, he gains 1 stack of charge, stacking up to 5 times. A max of 1 charge stack can be gained every time he is attacked. When charge stack reaches maximum, immediately launches a follow-up attack on all enemies, dealing wind damage equal to a percentage of Blade's attack plus a percentage of his max HP. At the same time, restores Blade's HP by 25% of his max HP. After the follow-up attack, all charges are consumed. Oh yeah, he is definitely going to be an amazing AoE wind DPS character. Also, a much needed self-heal to sustain Blade's insane HP consuming skills. So that's also a bit of relief to your team's healer. I'd like to mention that Blade actually needs to sustain damage, like it states up here in the text, sustains damage, in order to gain a stack of his talent. So shielders like Japard and March 7th won't synergize very well with Blade, unfortunately. And finally, for his technique, immediately attacks the enemy after entering combat, consumes 20% of Blade's max HP, while dealing wind damage equal to 40% of his max HP to all enemies. If Blade's current HP is insignificant, his HP will be reduced to 1 when his technique is used. A good way to gain a quick stack of his talent and charge his ultimate, but overall, a pretty standard attacking technique. Alright, next I'm gonna go over his major traces. Starting off with his first major trace. When Blade's current HP is at 50% of max HP or lower, incoming healing increases by 20%. Very nice! This major trace allows Blade to sustain back to safe HP levels after dropping to a critical point. For his second major trace, if Blade hits a weakness broken enemy after using Forest of Swords, he will restore HP equal to 5% of his max HP plus 100. A rather small conditional self-heal. It's still nice to have, but it definitely will not save Blade from death in critical situations. And finally, for his third major trace, damage dealt by talent's follow-up attack increases by 20%. More damage is always nice to have, so a pretty good and solid major trace to end things off. As for his Eidolons, you guys should already know for every limited 5-star, I only go over their Eidolon 1, because if you're going to pull for anything past that, you definitely don't need my advice or help. So for his Eidolon 1, Blade's ultimate deals additionally increased damage to a single enemy target, with the increased amount equal to 150% of the tally of Blade's HP lost in the current battle. The tally of Blade's HP lost in the current battle is capped at 90% of his max HP. The tally value will be reset and reaccumulated after his ultimate has been used. Quite a large single target damage boost to his ultimate. With this Eidolon, your Blade becomes an even more well-rounded DPS that can now be brought to pretty much any fight as long as the enemy isn't resistant to wind. For the mid-spenders, it might be worth considering, but for free-to-play and small spenders, this Eidolon, although strong, is not worth your Stellar Jade. It doesn't change Blade's playstyle, he's still going to do a lot of AoE damage and pretty decent single target damage. It only adds a solid chunk of damage to his overall performance. Alright, now I'm going to go over Blade's pros and cons, starting off with the pros. For his first pro, he is a durable DPS. Since the majority of his damage is scaled off his max HP, naturally, Blade will be much more durable when compared to your traditional attack damage scaling damage dealer. I'm probably going to estimate that Blade will probably be about as tanky as someone like Bailu, maybe even tankier because he's up the Destruction Path. I believe Destruction Path characters actually have probably the highest base HP in the game. Maybe Preservation has more, I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. He's definitely going to be one of the tankiest characters we have ever seen. So in terms of survivability, you definitely don't have to worry much about Blade being taken down easily by your opponent. For his next pro, he has really good self-sustain, mostly from his talent and his major traces. And his ultimate, of course, can reset his max HP to a safe point of 50%. Blade definitely has a lot of self-sustain, when compared to his 4-star competitor, Arlan. Imagine if Arlan had some more self-sustain in his kit. I feel like if he did, people wouldn't be able to criticize him as much, because the main issue with Arlan right now is just his ability to stay alive. And unlike Blade, who scales up HP, which technically makes him more durable, Arlan's damage is all based off his attack, so when he drops the critical HP points, it's just really easy for the opponent to just finish him off. That will not be the case, however, for Blade. Even if he does drop the low HP levels, he can easily top himself off, like I mentioned before, with his talent, his major traces, and even his ultimate. However, having a healer on your team to be paired along with your Blade is always the safer option. Next, Blade has very low skill point consumption. Since Blade only needs to consume a skill point every 3 turns for his skill point economy is much easier to manage when compared to other DPS characters like SEELE and Sushang. This in turn allows for more flexibility, since now you have the extra skill points that can be used on either another DPS character on your team or your supporting characters and healers. And finally, for his last pro, Blade has very strong AoE break potential. Much like Jing Yuan, thanks to Blade's talent follow-up attack, he is able to easily break multiple enemies, further increasing his overall damage and even allowing him to heal more often. Alright, now let's go over his cons. His first con is that he's going to need very high investment. Not only is Blade going to need really high offensive and defensive stats to properly function as a damage dealer, but he will also need full investment in his skills and traces. Most DPS characters can ignore or invest very little in their basic attack and talent, but for Blade, that's where the majority of his damage stems from. You can't ignore his ultimate and skill either, as he can also dish out a lot of damage with those skills leveled up as well. His major traces are all solid and really strong, and the extra stats of critical rate and HP percentage from his side nodes are exceptionally useful for Blade as well. So basically, it's all in or nothing when it comes to building Blade. His second con is that he has a high energy cost. Basically the same energy cost as someone like Ting Young, and the lack of energy regeneration from his skill does hurt him a bit when it comes to his high energy costing ultimate. He does, however, have the benefit of his follow-up attack to make up for it. Although it's not an entirely reliable form of energy regeneration, because sometimes the enemy won't hit you, so you won't be able to stack up his talent as often as you should, resulting in slower and less energy regeneration. And finally, for his last con, he does not work well with shielders. Since Blade needs to actually sustain damage, unlike someone like Clara, to generate stacks for his talent, shielders simply don't work with Blade. On top of that, all the current shielders we have at the moment are of the preservation path. So that means that they will have higher aggro values, which in turn could draw attacks away from Blade, denying him stacks for his talent and further reducing his potential damage output. Alright, now time to answer the big question. Should you pull or skip for Blade? I'm going to start off with the reasons why you should consider pulling for Blade. First reason why you might want to consider pulling for Blade is if you need or want a AoE wind damage dealer. Currently, only Sample has some AoE wind coverage, but even his wind AoE damage is random because his skill is a bounce attack. And it kind of relies on a certain team, a DOT team to be precise, to be built around him. Versus someone like Blade, in my opinion, he seems like a more flexible character just due to his self-sustain and low skill point consumption. I believe he's going to be able to be slotted into the majority of your teams when compared to someone like Sampo. Therefore, Blade is your perfect solution if you want a Jing Yuan equivalent for the wind element. The next reason why you might want to consider pulling for Blade is if you have Luocha or Bailu to keep Blade sustained and safe, or Bronya for more offensive capabilities. Luocha's kit synergizes really well with Blade. I'm pretty sure this has been mentioned multiple times already. And Bailu actually works fairly well with Blade as well. Mostly due to her invigoration mechanic, Blade is able to restore a portion of his HP the moment he is hit, and a lot of Bailu's major traces actually benefit Blade. Like for example, one of Bailu's traces actually increases max HP if that character is already at full HP and is healed. Another major trace that Bailu has is that whenever a character has invigoration on them, they actually take 10% reduced damage. so having some damage mitigation can also prevent your blade from being bursted down. On top of that, she also has a revive mechanic, so if your blade ever does die, you'll get a second chance. In general, both these healers make playing and managing Blade's HP pool a lot easier. As for Bronya, she is one of the only current Harmony characters that provides a straight damage boost with the use of her skill. All the other Harmony characters either only buff attack or need to use their ultimate to provide a non-attack stat damage boost. Bronya is also able to spam her skill more often because Blade is a pretty skill point efficient character. This ultimately will result in more damage dealt by Blade and more energy regeneration for Bronya. For the next reason why you might want to consider pulling for Blade is if you want at least 2 of the 3 rate up 4 stars on Blade's banner and you don't mind pulling for Blade. Do not pull if you only care for the 4-star characters. I'm sure many of us have already made this mistake on previous banners. Me, for example, on the Jing Yuan banner, I wanted Su Shang and Ting Yong, not so much Jing Yuan. Luckily, I didn't actually pull him. But what ended up happening, if you guys didn't watch the video, was I didn't get any copies of Ting Yong. I only got 1 copy of Su Shang. And all the other 4 stars were March 7th. Granted, she is really strong at the moment at Eidolon 6. And finally, for the most obvious reason why you should consider pulling for Blade, is if you like the character himself. I'm not gonna lie, design-wise, Blade is probably one of the best looking male characters in the game of Honkai Star Rail at the moment. If I had the extra Stellar Jade, or if I were spending in the game, I would definitely be pulling for Blade. Alright, now I'm gonna go over the reasons why you might want to consider skipping Blade. And the first and obvious reason is if you're dead broke in terms of Stellar Jade and special Star Rail passes. Long story short, empty wallet means no pull. Skip, skip, skip. The next reason why you might want to consider skipping Blade is if you already have Jing Yuan and Clara built. These 2 characters fill a similar role to Blade in a sense that they both do very strong AoE damage. Pulling for Blade would mean doubling up on something you already have. So it's probably a wise decision to instead save for someone else that covers a different role. For example, if you guys are missing a strong single target damage dealer, then you should probably be saving for one of those characters in the future. And finally, for the last reason why you might want to consider skipping Blade is if you plan on pulling for Kafka or any of the upcoming limited 5-star characters in patch 1.3. I personally am really interested in both Imbibitor Lunane, if that's how you pronounce him, basically Imaginary Danheng, if you guys don't know who I'm talking about, and Fu Xuan. I'm mostly interested in Imbibitor Lunane because of his Imaginary and Destruction Path coverage. Currently, those are the elements and paths that I do not have characters built up for, and I'm interested in Fu Xuan for a potential Mono Quantum team with my SEELE and Silverwolf. All these upcoming limited 5 stars are worth considering, so make sure you think twice before pulling for Blade. Alright guys, well that's going to be it for this Honkai Star Rail video. Let me know in the comments below if you guys plan on pulling for Blade, or if you guys plan on skipping him and pulling for Kafka, or any of the upcoming characters in patch 1.3. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, or join if you wish to support my channel even further. But other than that, I'll see you guys in the next Honkai Star Rail video. Peace!
Wanna spy? Disappear among